Welcome to the Friends of Fantasy Benefits Baseball Podcast. I am Justin Mason, joined as always by Dave McDonald. I guess not as always. You weren't here last week. Welcome back, buddy.
Yeah, man. It's been I feel like it's been about a month since I've been on the mic. It's weird, but with getting ready for Vegas and everything and all of the drafts, and I unlike the rest of these degenerates, don't do 100 slow drafts in December and January and February. I did, I think, like 80% of my drafting, like pretty much late March to early April. I just did my last draft yesterday, actually. A Yahoo high stakes draft. So I ended up with I think 16 leagues overall, which is for me the most I've ever done. I'm not a quantity player, but we're gonna give it a go because so far the Yahoo leagues have been free money for me since I've been doing them. So I'm hoping that continues. And obviously NFBC, I've got like 10 leagues there and a couple of fan tracks as well.
Well, you and I have the same amount of leagues this year then, which is an interesting turn of events.
Wow.
And I will tell you, it was very nice doing Fab this week and only having, I think, 6 or 7 Fabs to do.
Oh, God.
Like,
That's
it was
still too many.
It was really, really nice change of pace after last year having like 18 Fabs to do. So
yeah, I have 5. Well, I have 6, but the 6th is Glarf, which is 2 hours after the rest of the Fab, which is really nice because I don't have to worry about it at the same time as my super and my ultimate and my main event TGFBI. So and the tag. So yeah, it was nice to have that break, that mental break, to not have to have it, because I can't do that many, honestly. I can do like 5 is like the absolute most I can do for Fab at one time.
This was a good decision. I got to thank Rob Silver for betting me that I would do 17 or less leagues. So
now, how much did your wife? How much did your wife pay him to put him up to make that bet with you? Because she knew that was the only way to stop you.
No. I mean, she jumped in on it. It was like, hey, if you do more than 16, I'll divorce you. So that's why I'm doing 15. She was just quick to jump on the bandwagon there. Speaking of jumping on the bandwagon, we have a fantastic guest today. We have Lauren Auerbach of SP Streamer of Fantrax. You can catch her on Twitter at LK Auerbach. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you. I just reminded everybody where you can reach the social media. If you want to plug it again, you can. But tell people what you do over at SP Streamer and Fantrax.
Over at SP Streamer, I co-host the Full Count podcast with Michael Simeone, and we do that once a week, and that's really fun. And then at Fantrax, I do both kind of baseball and football. And for this baseball season, I'll be doing a hot and cold series that I'll be like kind of looking at players that have hot streaks, cold streaks, and what that means for you as a fantasy manager. So that will start up later this week.
And Mike Curlin's already in the chat going, the better half of SP Streamer. That is very, very true. We love Michael Simeone here. Way more than we love Mike Curlin, but you definitely are the better half of the SP Streamer podcast. So definitely check out Lauren's work over on that podcast and then at Fantrax, because we're going to talk about some hot and some cold players today too. I've got some names that I want to check and see if you guys are worried about. We're not even a week in, so we're going to talk about Julio Urias. My wife was all like, should I be worried? Should I drop him? Like, no, don't do that. Maybe do that. I would need to beat her in TGFBI, but I don't need her to do that to beat her. And then we're going to talk about some players that we might be excited about and how excited should we be about them. But first, let's jump on some news. Lucas Giolito, I don't know if he officially hit the IL today, but I believe he's going to hit the IL if he has not officially hit it today. He has an oblique issue. They're expecting him to miss 2 to 3 starts. This seems super light. Dave, you're the doctor of the podcast. How worried are you about Lucas Giolito?
I mean, I went ahead and put him down for missing, the typical amount of time for an oblique, which is like 25 days, I believe, somewhere in that, 3 to 4
typically,
weeks area.
4 to 6 weeks.
He thinks he can come back sooner. Honestly, I don't really want him to try because that's probably just going to lead to more bad than good. So I'm just assuming I'm going to be without him for about a month.
Lauren, how do you feel about Giolito? I know you drafted him in your Darf League.
I did. I drafted him in my Darf League. It's kind of the same thing. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't like to see it. He's pitching well prior to him going down. I do think it's more of, like Dave said, kind of a 4-game absence versus 2. And like Dave, I don't want him coming back sooner because I think that with those oblique injuries, with pitchers, I mean, that's just, you're constantly using that, and you don't want to not come back where you're 100% healed, because then it'll just mean more time on the IL.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a bummer for me because we were talking about prior to the start. My Barf League team, which we are not going to discuss today, has he does not have Giolito on that team actually. And that one has Lance Lynn, but I lost 6 of my first 6 or 5 starting pitchers and both my closers already. So that's going well. Yeah, I agree with you guys. Typically these injuries take about 4 to 6 weeks, and they have high reoccurrences if guys try to come back sooner. So as much as I know he wants to come back sooner, I kind of hope he takes it easy and makes sure he's healthy, because he looked good up until the point where he got pulled in that game. So Luis Patino left today with an oblique injury. Was like in clear pain. I don't know if you guys saw this, but he was really, really hurting. He had dealt with a shoulder issue in spring, ended up being fine from that. Now has this oblique issue, and I thought his shoulder had like dislocated or torn or something. When it happened, he was in so much pain. Lauren, what are you doing with Luis Patino? Because he's not a Giolito. He's not a guy you have to necessarily keep on your roster.
No, it's not. And I think it's something, say it would probably be for me a little bit more league dependent. And if you're in kind of a more shallower league, then I think that you can, if you do roster him, I think you can, and you don't have IL spots, I think that you can cut him. And then I think, you just kind of have to wait and see. I didn't see that, what it looked like. You said that it looked like he was like in pain. So, depending on, I'd like to see a little bit more get a little bit more information on it. But if you, obviously, I think that if you have an IL spot, you throw him on the IL, but you may have to make that may be a roster decision that you have to make in the next week, depending on how bad the situation is.
Dave, where are you at on Patino?
Yeah, exactly what Lauren said. I think it's league dependent. You can definitely move on in 12 teams and shallower, but 15 teamers, it's hard to find a talent like him. But I kind of stayed away from him because I was afraid of the shoulder, and it seemed like he was trying to quickly ramp up. Like, I don't think he got many spring innings in at all. I think it'll probably be a while before he's useful. I would only hold him if it was like a 15-team deep league and I didn't have any other players I was trying to stash. Otherwise, I think I'd probably just cut bait and move on.
Yeah, I have him in 5 leagues, and they're all NFBC leagues where we don't have an IL. They're all 15-team leagues.
Are any of them DCs?
I'm sure. Oh, actually, no, I don't think they are. I think they're all Fab leagues. And this includes my main event, my auction, or the auction championship, the tag team league. I'm likely cutting him in any place that I already have injuries. I have him in Barf. He was my 5th starter that got hurt. So like because I think he's probably going to miss 2 months, at least 4 to 6 weeks out. Like we were just talking about with Giolito, that standard is typically 4 to 6 weeks. And I mean, the kind of pain he looked to be in tells me this might be a little bit worse. My big fear with a guy like Patino is it's the Rays, and do the Rays then make him kind of like a bulk inning guy as opposed to a starter? And will they be a team that gets aggressive and goes and gets like a Montas? Because they're dealing with multiple injuries right now.
Yeah, they have a lot of guys there too. I mean, they're bringing up Tommy Romero to start tomorrow. He could easily hold on to that job. I mean, another reason that my group never touched Patino was also because we don't think that the Rays were really committed to starting him like you're worried about. He's their 5th starter. It seemed like what Baz could come back and take his spot. There's a lot of guys. I feel like there's too many ways that he could just end up not getting started. It's not worth holding him.
If Baz beats him back, then I think Baz becomes a starter, and maybe Patino becomes kind of a middle reliever. And I don't know.
You also have Yarbrough down too. So I mean, in terms of depth, I don't know really.
And Corey Kluber looked like garbage.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm probably going to cut bait in leagues where I don't have an IL, and even in leagues where I have an IL, if my IL is already full, as some of you are already experiencing a lot of injuries already early on in the season, I have no problem just moving on and going after the next guy, because the last thing you want to do is hold on to a guy for 2 months and then find out he's not even going to start.
The only guys I'm willing to hold on to for 2 months are like really like elite players. Otherwise,
the Giolitos, the Lynns,
Lance Lynn,
Sales,
maybe Chris Sale, exactly.
So, Zach Gallen was scratched from his start today, I think, for a cut on his thumb. Any worries there, Dave?
I mean, not if that's all it is. I have my concerns with Gallen outside of that, but if it's just a cut in his thumb, then it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, and he should be back, in probably a turn or two.
What about you, Lauren? Any worries on Gallen?
No, I mean, similar to what Dave says. I think also if it's just kind of a finger thing, and if it doesn't linger, then it should be okay. And if you had concerns outside of that, those are separate than a finger issue.
All right. I'm right there with you guys. So we'll just move on to Blake Snell, who is dealing with a groin injury. This is the same type of groin injury that shut him down at the end of last season. Word was yesterday after the game, Bob Melvin, their manager, said he's likely going to go on the IL. Word today is that he's going to throw some sort of bullpen tomorrow. He's going to play catch and then potentially throw a bullpen. And if he's feeling good, then maybe he'll still start on Friday. I had the decision in a few leagues whether or not I should leave him in my roster and hope that he starts on Friday, or go with Chris Stratton in a couple leagues, and I think Andrew Heaney in another. And I ended up leaving him out of leaving Blake Snell out of my roster and going with the other guys, mostly because I don't want to take a zero, and he's going to be starting up against the Braves, who are a really good team. But Lauren, how worried are you on Blake Snell dealing with a groin injury right now?
How long did it keep him out for last season?
It shut him down. It was right at the end of the season. So, but I think he only missed like 1, maybe 2 starts.
Okay. And just real quickly asking Dr. Dave this, with groin injuries, is that something that is just typically, I mean, depending on the severity of it, is it just generally like you miss maybe 1 or 2 starts? It's nothing like, really bad?
Yeah, I mean, it completely depends on the severity of it. Like, it can be a 2-week thing, or it can be a 2-month thing. And the fact that this also was an issue for him last year, that it's compounded, that does concern me.
Yeah.
He's always been a guy with just so many injury issues that he's never been a guy I've really wanted to draft early in the draft season. Justin and I talking about, I was like, yeah, like the price is finally right, because like the price never came down on Blake Snell. It was always way too high for his risk, and this year was like, oh, it's actually kind of palatable. Then he started going up, and then the injury stuff started creeping in again, and he didn't get a lot of innings in, and I'm just like, I'm out again. So it's I mean, you got to hold him, because it's not as bad as like an arm injury or anything like that, but it's still not great for his prospects this year.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I mean, if you're just talking about if Melvin's already like, well, he may actually pitch later in the week, I think that depending on your options, you may want to be conservative and hold him out. But it doesn't sound as of now that it's necessarily super severe or anything. So I think you kind of hang on to him.
Even if he does pitch, like let's say you're playing in a daily moves format, you're playing on Yahoo or ESPN or something like that, and you can change your roster. I don't know that you want to start him because they'll probably be very conservative with his workload coming off of that. And it is against the Braves. So, I mean, you could just get shellacked for, 4 runs in 2 innings. I just don't know that the upside is even worth considering him as an option, even if he is pitching. So, hopefully he's okay because, like I said, I've got him in a few leagues. I don't want him to miss more time. I cannot afford these teams to be all missing all this time. So, Danny Jansen hits the IL with an oblique injury. A lot of oblique injuries going on right now.
Yeah.
Guys got to work out your sides. Get those muscles on the sides going.
Just go like this. Yeah.
Any worry about this long term there, Lauren? And would you be interested in maybe picking up a Zach Collins?
Oh, Zach Collins. I don't know about how severe are we talking about here with Danny Jansen?
I don't think they've said yet.
Oh, they haven't said yet.
No.
Well, I mean, that is an easy way. I mean, we were all kind of talking about, well, what's the playing time for these catchers, in Toronto? I mean, this kind of is a natural. Today, I think Kirk was in today, I think, the lineup. So that may prove to, alleviate those kind of concerns with the catchers. But I don't know if you had Jansen. I mean, I guess maybe I would consider picking up a Collins or something. I would probably look more in-house if and maybe if you had Jansen, maybe you already did, have a Kirk or something like that. So I'd see, depending on your league depth, who's available on the wire.
Dave, what about you? Obviously you're putting Jansen on your IL. Unless you are in like an NFBC format, would you cut Danny Jansen? And then are you interested in picking up Zach Collins at all?
That's a tough call. I think, I don't think I'm going to be holding a catcher. Like, he was hitting well too. It kind of sucks.
Yeah, he was hitting really well.
He was. But how often was he playing? Was he playing like? Oh, actually, I have it open right here.
I think he's playing fairly regularly because Kirk has been DHing. Kirk also played behind the plate, but I want to say Jansen played 2 out of 3 games.
Let's see. He started on the 8th and 10th, and he was scratched today, right? Like he was supposed to play.
Mm-hmm.
So he was basically playing 75% of the games so far. I mean, it's obviously a small sample, but that's really good. So it seemed like he was pretty much the everyday catcher, and Kirk was the everyday DH, and then obviously they rotate other guys into the DH like Springer and whatnot. But that's a tough question. I mean, obviously in 12 teams, if you even have Jansen there, which you probably don't, you're moving on. But in 15s is where it's tough. Given the catcher landscape out right now, which is nothing, I'm not really interested in Zach Collins. I'm probably trying to stash him if I can. I don't know if you're going to be able to. There's going to be a lot more injuries coming, guys. Like, this is what happens with a quick spring ramp up. Guys are more prone to getting hurt, and there's going to be a lot more to come in the next couple weeks still.
All right. Go ahead and take over the next section there, Dave.
Yeah, so Lauren joined our DC affiliate of Earth called DARF. Led by Art. I always forget his last name.
Zales.
They call him Cheesecake.
Yeah, he's Cheesecake from the Triple Play, pod. Great guy. Love Art. And so you guys got together in person for this, right?
We did.
That was the goal for everybody, and I was pretty sure. But I heard you guys had like 11 or like 13 out of 15 people there.
Yeah, we had a good showing. Some of us knew each other, but I think for the most part,
really,
we were maybe aware of each other, but we didn't. Yeah, I mean, and so it was kind of set to like an hour slow draft, and so people were kind of went around and were able to kind of say hi and do all that stuff, and so it was good. It was a good event, and most of like you said, most of us were there, so it was fun, and we're looking forward to doing more of it, in the years. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that was the whole idea behind Earth, was basically just to get people together in your communities and meet people, who might be even right around you, and be able to look forward to this every year and maybe hang out outside of that, maybe go to a Nats game for you guys or whatnot. But Yeah, where did you guys draft that? Like, were you guys at like a bar?
We were at a bar in Virginia. It was someone knew the owner, cool. We were there, and so it was fun. There actually was like another party going on at the same time, but it was like we kind of had our little section.
Which
of
bar?
The bar.
Let's give them a shout out. Do you remember? Do you remember the name?
No.
I was gonna see if I knew it because I grew up in that area.
Well, no, it's a new. It was like a new restaurant. It's new, like in the past year. Pizza something or other. Now I feel bad that I don't know this.
What town? What town was it in Virginia?
It was in Boston.
I don't even know where Boston is.
It's just like kind of by the courthouse to the west of it. I feel like I need to look this up now, but but we had a good time and it was fun getting to meet everyone and at least say hello. We didn't have like tons of like super in-depth conversation because I think people were kind of like glued to their computers and stuff, and but it got to a point later in the draft where people were milling around a little bit, but it was fun. And like you said, the idea of kind of getting together later for like social events or something. I know for opening day here, we had a little DARF DM and people were like, hey, is anyone going to the game? Do you want to meet up? So I think that's all good. And I'm looking forward to kind of hanging out with more of the DARF peeps.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you guys like Glarf have two women, right? Because Shelly's in your league too as well, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Shelly
Yeah.
That's really great. I was very happy about that. Yeah. So Justin's bringing up now the draft board where you implemented what we are calling the hot pocket strategy, where you started with 2 third basemen. So tell us a little bit about that. And was that the plan going in, or did it just kind of fall that way?
No, that was not the plan going in. I found myself at the end of a couple of 15-team drafts this season, and you never really know who's going to be there or what's going to happen. So, and
you didn't want to be, right? That was not.
I was no. Well, no. I didn't want it to be, but it's also just like that's just how it was. So
sure.
So basically if I was going to take a pitcher, I would only take like Cole or Burns. They were off. Some of those kind of speed power guys, like Harper and Tucker were gone, which then I kind of look for. And then it's like, well, do I want to go with, a pitcher? And I didn't really want to since those two were gone. And I was like, well, I really like Machado. I like Machado at the turn. So he was someone that I was definitely going to draft. And then it was really kind of between, I was like, do I want to take a shot on Acuna or do I want to go with Woodruff? And I was just kind of looking at those two guys. And I was like, you know what? I also like Devers and, kind of like, what the hell? I mean, this is, it's a short position. It's a shallow position. And I was like, I'll just double tap on the third baseman there. I will say when I did that, there was like a lot of murmuring going on.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh,
I bet.
And then, it was like, oh, very interesting strategy, Lauren. And it's one of those things when you're at the turn, you kind of have to control it as best you can because you're kind of at the control, you can't really control.
You have to control the draft. You can't let the draft control you. Like when you're on the ends, you have to do what you have to do. You can't you're not in the middle where you can just take whatever value falls to you. So yeah, it's completely different strategy on the ends for sure.
But I mean, people were just like, oh, but I also like both of those players. They happen to be at a shallow position. It just feels too spot. Like, I don't know. I think that there were people just like, oh, but then other people were like, ah. So it was kind of like a mixed,
Yeah.
But I'm fine with it. I'm happy with it. And we'll see how it goes.
And then you followed that up with Giolito, who you previously mentioned, who unfortunately has the oblique injury now. But getting him at the end of the third, that was an amazing price because come live main events, he was going at the end of the first and early second round. So
yeah, I took him at with the third pick or the fourth pick of the second round in my main. So
and there was no guarantee that he would even be on the board at that point. So.
Right.
I mean, he's a guy who I thought was pretty underrated at the point where you did this draft. So I think that's a great get. And then you got a closer early. You got a Clase with your fourth rounder. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, one of the things that I've tried to do probably in the first kind of 4 to 6 picks is, I always want to kind of walk out with one of the top closers there. you know, and at least one pitcher, and then just kind of, you know, the other slots is just kind of, you know, reading the room and gauging what's there and kind of where you are at the point in the draft, or what the slot that you're drafting from, and you know, think about what you can and cannot get and kind of go from there. I mean, I will say, and this is like no excuse kind of by any means, but doing this, you know, live drafting, it was one of these things where I hadn't done a live draft in years, right? And it was with people, you know, kind of meeting each other, whatever. I'm pretty good generally at kind of spreading around power and speed. And it got to a point where I was like, you know what? I thought I had more speed than what I did. So one of the things that I actually don't like about this team, it's two things. It's one, I was kind of lacking early speed. And then also really the catchers just got out from under me. And I wanted to try and get, I would have liked to have gotten kind of a higher tier catcher, but that didn't happen. So
I agree with both of those points, though. You did very well, I think, for your catchers, for getting late catchers, because Yachty and Sean Murphy are both guys who play a lot. And you got them in the 18th and 19th rounds. Like I do love that. For I mean, I'm also an early catcher guy, so I'm with you on that. But if you can't get the early catchers, then yeah. I will say this about the Hot Pockets, and I like it because it's such a
great name.
Yes.
You know what? I know that the hat tip is to Adam Howe over a pitcher list. Yeah. Because I think we were kind of tweeting about it and we're like, what should we call this? And he popped in and was like, Hot Pockets. And
I had literally thought of it like 5 minutes before he said it, and then I forgot it. And then he said it, and I was like, son of a bitch. Got me, Adam.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. No, I like that they're, you know, because third base is so shallow. I do like that. But my issue is twofold. I love so many first basemen that I really want to get that first baseman as like a late first base corner infielder.
Right.
And speed is so difficult to get outside of the first few rounds that I can't leave the first 2 rounds with you know, Devers and Machado might give you 15 steals, maybe like upside of 20. That's tough to recover from. But I do like a lot of this. I love that you got Giolito as your ace. I love that you got Clase, like you got a top closer. Brian Reynolds is a guy who I have in like 75% of my leagues. I'm in love with him this year. I think he's basically a guy who goes about 4 rounds too late. So Ahmed Rosario is another guy who I have everywhere. And I will say this, there's a lot of speed upside with Rosario. Because he has stolen 25 in the past, and he could easily do that if he decides to run this year. And I don't know why he wouldn't, because it's not like the Guardians, you know, are going to hold him back. So he had a perfect success rate over the last 2 seasons of 13 for 13. So if he runs more, I think there's a lot of upside there. So I really liked your draft. I thought it was really interesting, and I wanted to hear what you had to say about that. But so any other thoughts overall on the rest of the draft?
No, you know, I kind of started taking shots at the end. So I got Class A, but I didn't really. You scroll up a little bit. You didn't
get a second closer.
I did, yeah. So I was kind of taking. That's also another ding on this team, but I tend to do that. I tend to be really bad about drafting closers. I do like kind of one big one, and then I never, ever, ever want to draft kind of like lesser closers. But I have never gotten like 2 kind of pocket, you know, big closers. So that's always like a thing that I just need to improve on as I think in terms of being a better drafter in the future. But so I had to take a lot of shots kind of at the end of the draft on some of these guys. But you know, I think overall I'm okay with it. And it's also one of those things that I don't know if this is kind of the case with you guys. I feel like there are some teams I walk away from and I'm like, yeah, this is like really great. And it ends up like not being a good team. And other teams where I'm like, and it turns out to be like my best team. So, you know, the season's long. And I think as long as you can kind of be on top of your managing and your fab game, you know, and everyone has a shot. So
for sure.
Yeah. I will say that the Hot Pockets thing made murmurs, but then like someone else like later in the second round took Clayton Kershaw, and that my Hot Pockets was nothing compared to someone taking Kershaw in the second. So,
oh God, yeah, Team 4. This team, oh my God, this was like the new rogue drafter. I was watching this live, and when I saw Clayton Kershaw, Art DM'd me, and he was just like, "Oh my God, a guy in Darf just took Kershaw in the second round." He's like, "What does he think this is, like 2015?" And I was like, "Oh no." So
do we know who this person is?
No,
I don't know who he is. No.
I mean, I saw his name at the time, and I never knew who he was. He has more Twitter followers than me, I can say that. But
well, that's not difficult,
right? He also took Chris Bassett in the 4th, Carlos Correa in the 5th, Yuli Gurriel in the 6th. Yeah, it was very rogue drafter-esque.
Yeah, that definitely took the spotlight off of Hot Pockets. So.
Yeah. When I saw that draft, I was like, okay,
it's not the worst draft I've ever seen, but it's
really
something.
Really.
I mean, he ended up getting Anthony Bender in the 29th. So got a second closer.
Okay, all right.
So did he get a first closer? Oh, he didn't get a first closer.
No, that's the first closer. So, Justin, there's hope for your barf team. You might only come in second last.
Yeah, I mean, I like some of the picks, but it's almost like a keeper league when you're going for it for the next year, and you trade away like all of your your top 7 picks.
Yeah.
For someone else's like bottom 7 picks, it feels like a team like that. So it's like I like a lot of the picks, but if you got them later, not
like 10 rounds later,
Right.
Bassett in the 10th, sure. Bassett in the 4th, oh no.
I mean,
but we'll see. We never know. This guy could have an amazing team, at the end of the season. So we never know.
Yeah, we will see. We will see.
Yeah, but it's fun. It was really fun. And
now, do you think the drafting live hinders? Because you said it was the first time you did it in a while. Did it hinder you from your normal process? Okay,
it did, because if you think about if you've been drafting for the past couple years, like in your office or wherever you draft, just like
you've got all your resources
whatever.
around you. Yeah.
You've got your whatever you need wherever it is, and it's like quiet, whatever, or whatever your regular things are that you do when you draft. That was definitely taken out. Like I said, I totally lost track of speed in this draft, and I think part of it was because I was live and talking to people, and it just got away from me a little bit. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Justin,
but it was definitely fun.
Did you feel the same way your first time doing a live fantasy baseball draft? Because now you've done it with Bar for I don't know how many years, but then you've also done the main event. I've done it for 15 years now. I'm used to it, and I make sure I have everything I need at the draft table. But it's still tough.
Yeah,
I started my first fantasy league was a live auction, and so that's kind of what I grew up on. Barf is a little bit of a different animal for me because I'm kind of running it. And I don't know if you felt this with Glarf, is especially because we're dealing with a lot of drunk people.
I was like one of like 2
this
people
year was
drinking.
Better. This was better than in years past.
Well, you have to deal with Eno, so that's tough on its own.
Eno maintained very well this year. But I end up not focusing as much on my draft as I probably should, because I'm trying to prod the cattle into making their picks in a timely manner.
Right. I had to do a little bit of that.
In the future, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to be I'm going to make sure we can stay for as long as we want. And if it ends up being an 8-hour draft, it ends up being an 8-hour draft. Because I definitely I left the Barf draft with a team that I did not feel as confident about, as opposed to my main event in Vegas or the auction in Vegas. Those were live drafts, but I'm solely focusing on my draft, even though I was screaming at people across the room and stuff because we had a bunch of friends at the table.
Right.
Did you draft regular, a 2-minute draft, or did you guys have a slower draft in terms?
We
of
did
time?
the same thing as you, where it was an hour.
Yeah.
The problem was with, at least for Barf, is we had a time in which we had to vacate the bar we were at.
Yeah.
And it took us like almost 3 hours to get through the first 10 rounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I had to yell at people because we only had like 2 hours to finish the last 20 rounds. So, and we ended up doing it in plenty of time, but I think in the future I'll make sure that we're picking a date in which we're not running in any sort of conflict at wherever we're having it at the bar. We have it at the Rec Room in San Francisco, which is an amazing sports bar. Definitely go there if you ever.
Oh yeah, what's it called again?
The Rec Room.
The Rec Room.
It's a fantastic sports bar. We've been doing it there every year since the start. They take great care of us. Todd.
Now is that REC Rec or WRECK Rec?
WRECK.
Okay.
So, nice. It's a fantastic bar in downtown San Francisco. But they had an event that night that we didn't know about until like the night before, and so I was like, okay, got to get some of the drunkies to move it along with.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we had the same kind of thing where we were taking our time, with our picks and realizing through like 10 rounds that, okay, we can't keep doing this. We will literally not finish this draft tonight. And our draft ended up taking, I think, 7.5 hours. And that was with me hustling everybody along after like round, 11 or 12 or so to make picks within a minute instead of, the kind of, well, maybe I'll make it in 4 or 5 minutes or whatever. Yeah. But now Darf didn't finish at the
Darf
live,
finished
right?
on Monday.
Right.
Oh.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where because we were taking too long and some people had to leave. There was a lot of people that had to leave and just went on auto. Yeah. And I actually kind of thought that people then, by the time you got home, you just kind of finish it up. And Art was like, I think this will be fine. We'll just finish it tonight. It'll just be like at home. But that Saturday went into Sunday. Sunday turned into Monday. And, Art, he was going around. He's just like, okay, like, pinging people like, okay, you're on the clock. You're on deck. Like, and it was just like, it still went through Monday. And I was like, man.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's a little brutal. But
well, it was the first year for all of us. Well, other than Barf. But, it was a learning experience for a lot of us to figure out what we kind of have to do for next year and future.
Yeah, I highly recommend starting as early as possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if you try to start in the afternoon, it's especially because people are a lot more apt to start drinking. If it's a noon draft, it's like, hey, I'm having beer with lunch, and then
right.
By the end of it, we've had some drafts, and I will not name names, but we've had some drafts where where cabs were called for people as opposed to them driving their own cars home because people could not stand at the end of the draft.
Having a good time,
Yeah, I want to. That's what I want from Glarf, but people aren't drinking with me. I'm like,
well, then you need to come out and visit for Barf one year because we've had some people get really tanked, and it gives me a competitive advantage because I don't drink.
You think so?
Maybe this is how I won that one year. Is that was a year in which I think 4 or 5 people were like really, really tanked,
hammered.
Oh
god.
So,
the other problem with Glarf is that we're from all over, so it's hard to start early because we've got people from Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, all over.
We have the same issue. We've got people.
Oh, do you?
We have people. Like Matt Davis drove like 3.5 hours.
That sounds about right.
him, Matt, and Zach Betancourt. They drove up the night before and got a hotel room, and just stayed the weekend. So we got people who, cool. Toby's coming from I think like 2.5 hours away. Bubba's coming from 3 or 4 hours. Dalton Del Don's coming for 3 or 4 hours. We had a guy who flew in. He lives in in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And he scheduled a business trip the same week as Barf, so he could fly back in because he's been in since the beginning. It's Greg Smith,
hardcore
of 2QBs.com. He's now going to be moving back to the area before the next year's draft. But literally, he's like, hey, we need to figure out the draft dates so that way I can schedule a business trip back to San Francisco to make sure I'm there.
That's
which
awesome,
is fantastic, right? Yeah, love it.
That is awesome. Lauren, I just also want to ask, what other kind of leagues did you do this year other than DARF? Like, did you do any do you do any other high stakes drafts or
So I did. So this was my first year. I kind of dipped my toe into NFBC dumb. And I'm in TGFBI, DARF, doing an on the wire kind of guest listener league with the Pitcher List guys, Adam and Kevin. And then what's my end? I am in
great podcast, by the way. I love that.
Yes, I love that podcast.
Yeah, they're great.
And then I've got 2. So those are like kind of the 3 fab leagues for me for NFBC. And then I have 2 DCs. I was doing the Govier's
Palazzo.
2 L, 2 Z's, yeah. And what's the I'm doing another DC. I don't know if it's affiliated with anything. Battle of the Pods. It's kind of in not the main league like this.
Yeah.
The kind of
you guys are in the B League.
Yeah, the B League. We're the B. I'm the B team with that.
I'll be in the B League next year because that team.
We're gonna relegate Justin to the B League because
that team's been destroyed with injuries too.
Yeah, I'm pretty brutal over in that one right now. But I'm like, you know what? It's a draft and hold. It's very early on. Who knows what's going to happen during the season?
No, Justin, you need to stay in my league because you're going to be paying for our draft entry until the end of time. So
yeah, as long as. I have no problem paying that one off this year, but if we do a relegation thing, this team is in some trouble already. I've already lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pitchers in that league, and that does not include Will Smith, who was my number 1 closer in that league, who has lost that job. And that does not include Mackenzie Gore, who was sent down to the minor leagues. So that is 10 total pitchers who are not really going to be active for my team right now in a league where I drafted like 21 or 22 starting pitchers.
So like that Kershaw in round 2 is looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, that would be amazing
that
right
won't
now.
look good for long. There's no way he makes it through healthy. There's no way.
Yeah, so basically I had the kind of 3 fab, 2 draft and holds, and they're all 15 teamers except for 1. And I will say that 12 teamer to 15 teamer, it's really kind of thrown me a little bit in terms of adjusting to the player pool between the 2. Which I didn't really expect. I was like, oh, well, it just means there's more players. And it's like, it's more than that. So
you have to have a different like strategy. You have to look at the types of players who are going to be available after and trying to figure out where you should be allocating your resources to because what's going to be available on the wire after the draft and everything. Yeah. It's very, very different. And it's also tough to do fab going from 12 to 15 to 15 to 12 because it's a completely different animal.
I'm finding it very challenging right now, but I didn't think it would be as big of an issue, but I'm like, ooh, this is pretty significant, Lauren.
So now are all of your leagues on NFBC?
They are, and then I have a home league on Yahoo.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that for?
About 10 years, 10, 11 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. To have a home league going for that long.
Yeah, it's nice. And it's funny because I was like, it was the last draft of the season. It was my non-NFBC draft. And I also was like, oh, it's like a 12 team. It's also a keeper league. And I'm like, yeah, I could do this, And I was like, oh, again, with the player pool, it's like and then I'm like on Yahoo and we've got like, 1 catcher, 3 outfielders versus whatever. So, kind of those little things kind of add up and it's a different drafting game.
So I play high stakes Yahoo games also, and it's so different that the guys that I like literally will not draft in NFBC are my targets on Yahoo because they have those IL slots, and because it's daily changes. Like when Buxton gets injured on a Monday, I can throw him in an IL slot and pick up a really good player because the replacement value is so high in those leagues. All you care about is premium talent. So I'm drafting guys like Acuna because I can throw him right on the IL and pick up a really good player after the draft. And I'm drafting Buxton. Like my draft yesterday, my last draft went Vlad, Acuna, Buxton. None of those guys I would even consider in NFBC for where they go in drafts. So it's crazy.
Did you also take Mondesi?
No, I draw the line at Mondesi. I will still not be drafting.
Good to know. I loved how you besmirched him, and then like moments after you besmirched him on Twitter, he stole a base, and people were like, "Yes."
Well, he's playing my team. All right, I'm rooting for my Guardians, and hey, we took 2. We actually have an offense, supposedly.
Oh, I besmirched your team after you guys scored a total of 2 runs.
One run in the first 2 games.
That's 1 run in the first 2 games, and literally like 5 minutes after I besmirched them on Sunday, they like put up 10 runs.
And I was 17 on Saturday. Like,
it's crazy.
Oh my god, yeah, that was fun to see though. I haven't seen. I didn't think that they even could score 17 runs, to be frank with you, in a series, let alone a game. So it was,
anything is possible when the Royals are pitching.
That's true.
That's true.
Stephen Kwan though looks really good. I've been saying all along.
That's a really good segue.
It is,
talking about some of our other topics for tonight, because we will be talking about Stephen Kwan and another Guardian that's off to kind of a hot start. But first, I want to ask about you guys some questions about people you might be worried about. So let's start off with the aforementioned Julio Urias, who was bad in his first start. You can chalk that up a little bit to Colorado, but you also have to notice that his velocity was down across the board by a few miles per hour on all of his pitches. Lauren, how worried are you on Julio Urias?
It is concerning. I like you said, I mean, he was down across the board, like 2 miles per hour. And, it's one of those things where I think you've got cold weather. I think this short kind of ramp up season, this was not specific to Julio Urias. There were lots of velocities down in this kind of like opening weekend. So, but I think it is something that we need to watch. You don't want to be, rash or anything and just kind of just like drop him or anything like that. But it is something that you need to watch and in these next couple starts and see if he can get that velo back up. But if he can't, I am a little concerned about it.
What about you, Dave? How concerned are you right now?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Lauren was saying. A lot of guys are down. If a guy's down like a tick or a tick and a half, I'm not super concerned at this point. I think he's down like 3 miles an hour or close to. That is concerning. He's not a guy that I was drafting anywhere because I felt like with his strikeout rate, I don't think he should have been going as high as he was. He was someone I had as a much later value than where he was going, but you have to hold him. I mean, you can't use a second, third round pick on the guy and then drop him. I mean, you can, but not yet. You have to wait to see more information to see if this is going to turn around. I would give him at least the month of April to see, but you might not want to start him liberally. I'm not necessarily just throwing him out there against anyone right now.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like check the opponents and
Yeah, he was down almost 3 miles per hour on the fastball.
Yeah,
I'm pretty concerned. I know that we've seen some reduced velocities, but he just didn't look comfortable. And there was some concerns in spring about, he kind of changed his body type. I think he put on some muscle. That's not always a great thing for a pitcher. We saw this with Luke Weaver a few years ago. Remember when he was really, really good? And then he all of a sudden, like he came to camp, he's like, I put on 20 pounds of muscle. And then he was awful. Wow. Pitchers rely upon being able to repeat their mechanics. And when you have a big body change, sometimes that can have an effect.
Yeah.
Obviously this is not actionable. You don't trade him for, less than you got him for. You can't drop him. My wife was freaking out. Like, do I start him this week? I was like, yes, of course you start him this week. Like he was your second round pick. Like, unless there's some sort of news that comes out that he's not pitching, you've got to start him. But this is definitely something that if we see a repeat of a similar type issues in the next start, I'm gonna start freaking out. I don't have him anywhere, but it's not because I was fading him. He just never fell to me in the spot where I could get him. I either drafted at one end or the other this year. Is very rarely in the middle of the draft where I could get him in the middle of the second round. So, that's fortunate for me, but I'm hoping he's okay because he's just a fun pitcher to watch. So we'll see as we get more information. As of now, it doesn't seem the Dodgers are extremely worried, which is a good sign, right? So, are we worried about Jo Adell? Now, I put him on the rundown. He proceeded to hit a home run tonight.
Yeah.
So maybe our story changes. But we saw people dropping him in NFBC leagues this week. In his first 9 plate appearances, struck out 7 times. Dave, how worried are you on Jo Adell?
I didn't get Jo Adell anywhere, not because I was out on him, just because, you hear all the talk about they're going to be, it sounded like a 3-way time split for 2 positions between him, Marsh, and Taylor Ward. And you thinking like, how long can this really last? Like, how long can they really give Taylor Ward, the same amount of at-bats as the other 2? But I mean, it's early, but he has been not playing every day so far, but I would not be super concerned. I don't think he's like an elite player that you have to keep, but he has that skill set where he can give you homers. He can give you some speed. If you have him, I don't know why, if you drafted him, I don't know why you're dropping him already. Like, I don't see any reason to drop him just because he has a bunch of strikeouts early on. Like, that's not great to see, but you got to see a sample of like at least, 80 at bats or so before, if he has a 40% plus K rate at that point, maybe then I'm concerned, but I'm not concerned after 9 at bats. It's ridiculous.
Lauren, what about you? Are you concerned?
I'm a little concerned, just in the sense that it's like, it's not great. Maybe if he's already platooning, I think that with his plate approach, I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room there. I think that he had made strides, with his strikeout rate and was able to bring that down from that, that horrendous 41.7%, that we saw in 2020. And that has worked. And he actually had a really good spring. So, there's that. I just think that there's not a lot of wiggle room, like I said, with that kind of plate approach. But, the Angels, he was here, he was starting the season, in the majors. So I think that, he will play a little bit, but I am concerned a little bit.
His zone contact percentage is 47%.
It's insane.
So I was talking to Gordon Gecko on Twitter because he made a comment about this.
That's Mark Cerebro.
Yeah, it's Mark Cerebro, big NFBC guy, NFBC Hall of Famer. Got to meet him in Vegas. A really, really nice guy. Came up to me and introduced himself, and
he's definitely gotten a lot more personable in the last year because he wasn't always like super approachable.
He made he has his picture is of Gordon Gecko on Twitter, so I would not have recognized him had he not made a point of coming over and saying hi to me and stuff. And
that's nice.
Just a really nice seems like a really nice guy. But he commented about like people dropping him, and I kind of came back with the old Dennis Green. He is who we thought he was. This is Jo Adell. Like, I think people saw some small sample stuff from last year and then saw the small sample stuff from spring training, like, oh, maybe he's changing. He didn't really change in the minor leagues last year. He still swung outside of the zone too much, didn't make enough contact in the zone. There's power, there's speed, there's also atrocious defense. And what we've seen so far is that has not gotten better. I love the idea of Jo Adell. If you've been listening to me or reading my work from years ago when he was drafted, I love the idea of Jo Adell. But at some point, we need to see the tools translate on the field. And the reason I didn't draft him this year is because people are still paying for the dream of Jo Adell, not for the reality of him. I want to be wrong, and I'd love to see him put it all together because, like I said, I've been a big fan. I mean, he put up video game numbers, in high school. And, if you follow him on Twitter or Instagram, you see the amazing workout videos that he does. I mean, dude can literally jump from like neck deep water in a pool onto the deck of the pool without using his hands or nothing, just straight out of water. It's amazing what he can physically do.
Yeah.
But just because you're a freak athlete doesn't mean you can hit a baseball.
I was about to say, though, this is why we don't invest in videos of players and workout videos and all that stuff, though. People get overhyped on a guy then.
Do you think he'll have a long leash, though? I mean, do you think they'll let him kind of play it out if he struggles?
The fact that I worry that this is going to turn into a platoon between Marsh and, because it's not like Marsh has bell great either. Marsh at least is great defensively.
Yeah.
Which
do you mean you're afraid that Taylor Ward's going to be the everyday player and that Adele and Marsh are just going
That's what Joe Madden said.
I thought he also said that they're all going to get about 450 plate appearances between the three of them. So that
not with the way Adele's playing.
Well, I don't know. This is why I didn't draft him where he was going.
This is an Angels team that is built to win.
Yeah,
and
you're
they
right.
need
they
to
need
win.
to win. Yeah,
they need to make the playoffs. They've got the best player in the world, the second best player in the world. Like the fact that they have not even been close to a playoff spot the last couple of years is atrocious. They've Syndergaard looks great to start the year. Who knows how long that'll last for? But they help bolster that bullpen. This is a team that's poised to take a leap forward and make the playoffs and maybe even more this year. I don't think they're going to wait around. They've got other players that can play. So
I think you got to give them at least 3 weeks, though. You can't drop them in the first weekend.
I don't think you should, because like I said, going back to my initial point is, we knew who he was. Like this, you knew who you were getting when you drafted him. Right. This was built into the price, but two, like this is you drafted this profile. Hopefully, you paired it with other things. I would give him at least 2 to 3 weeks. But you can also move on if you've drafted a bunch of these guys, right? If you have Adele and Gallo and these hit or miss kind of guys, the Sano's, the Patrick Wisdoms, the Bobby Dahlbecks,
which you should never draft more than one of those guys.
Of course,
even that is too many.
If you did draft, a few of these guys, I have no problem jettisoning one of them off, and you jettison the one that isn't being successful right now.
Yeah.
So, next guy we're going to talk about, I want to know if you're worried about, it's Gleber Torres. And I want to know if, Lauren, you're worried about Torres because he seems to be the guy who may be the odd man out in New York in term, DJ LeMahieu has been playing pretty regularly. They're getting Torres in by rotating LeMahieu around, but it doesn't feel like the Yankees are super committed to him. Any worries on Gleber Torres?
This is going to sound like a weird answer, but, Torres was kind of a player that I've never, ever really kind of been interested in because I don't know what I'm going to get from him. And that I think that there's like a broad range of outcomes. I don't know. I think, 2019, I think, it's a kind of the happy ball. I think we had that's a little bit of an outlier year for Torres where he had 38 home runs, and 5 stolen bases. But I just don't I don't know what I'm gonna get. Like if we started off the season saying, he's not playing well, like, am I surprised? Like, am I concerned about that? Like, not really, because I've kind of always stay away because I just don't ever think there's a ton there. And I think now, with kind of the additions that the Yankees have brought on, they can afford if he's not playing, they're just going to rotate all these guys around. They have enough, I think people also say, that the Yankees are kind of like an injured group, but it's like, there's enough of them there that like, you can just have this carousel of Yankees that are going to go through and maybe Torres does get pushed out. I don't know. But in terms of, kind of am I like surprised or worried about this? I'm not worried because like I felt like it was like a possible outcome for him anyway, if that makes sense.
Dave, you were shaking your head a little bit when I was asking, are you worried? Torres has started 2 of the first 4 Yankee games. Why aren't you worried? Because it doesn't appear you
are. No, he started 3 of the first 4 Yankee games.
Oh, sorry, I missed him on today. So we started 3.
So it's. I've always thought that this was just. They had one extra player, basically one extra everyday player, and there were several guys in there that can all play multiple positions. Gleber can play second base and shortstop. Aaron Judge can play right field and center field, so when Hicks is out, like he was one of these games, Judge moved to center field.
Mm-hmm.
And DJ LeMahieu can play first, second, and third. So they're going to sit Donaldson. Like Donaldson's a guy who they are trying to keep healthy because this guy can't play every day with those calves. So they want to keep him healthy for the playoffs. Stanton is another guy. They're going to give him days off. All these guys it's going to be one huge rotation there where everybody's going to play like 5 out of 6 games. So Gleber Torres has no more risk there than anybody else. And this is exactly what I came out of spring training thinking, that they were just going to have basically Aaron Judge is probably going to be the only guy there that plays every day. Maybe they try to play Stanton every day. Personally, I wouldn't. But it's possible too that Gallo could play every day. He's pretty healthy too. But everybody else they're going to keep giving a day off to. LeMahieu Saturday, Glaber Saturday, Hicks Saturday, and someone else Saturday that I've already said before. But yeah, Donaldson Saturday. Yeah,
Donaldson sat today.
Yeah. So they're just going to have a big rotation. So there's no concern with Gleber. I took Gleber in a bunch of leagues, knowing that was the situation. It's not ideal, and he hits 6th, 7th in the lineup. That's also not ideal, but I do think for where he was going and the fact that he's also going to be gaining second base eligibility, so he's going to be shortstop and second base eligible, I was perfectly happy drafting him.
Yeah, I'm not overly worried, largely because 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, there's going to be like 2 or 3 of these guys that are injured. And Torres will be an everyday player. You won't even have to rotate. So, yeah, I mean, I think these situations often work themselves out. I mean, we were talking, we always talk about this with pitching, but it works out the same often with hitting too. It's like you just never can have enough guys because guys are just going to get hurt. And especially on the Yankees, with guys like Judge and Donaldson and Stanton, even LeMahieu is injured, dealing with injuries last year. I mean, there's going to be injuries that open up time for a guy like Torres. So I'm not super worried. And he's had a slow start to the season too. Not super worried about that either.
No.
So. Are we worried about Akil Baddoo though? It seems like he may be getting into kind of a platoon. He's been hitting in the bottom of the lineup to start the season. Dave, any worries on Akil Baddoo?
Well, I tweeted right before leaving for Vegas, basically, that there's no way that this guy is going to just like lead off every day. Like he's been pretty useless against lefties so far in his career. And they have several guys there that can mash lefties like Eric Haas. I don't know, because I don't think they faced a lefty yet. If I'm correct.
No, they believe they faced a lefty.
Oh, did they? Okay, I might have missed.
I could be wrong. Did they not face?
Righty. They faced 4 righties so far, but he sat once against a righty, which is not a good sign.
Yeah. He also batted 7th and 9th.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that they were going to do that. I thought he would stick as the leadoff hitter against righties, and then I thought he would sit against lefties. But actually, I thought he had a better chance once Riley Green went out, because I thought Riley Green would be the impediment to him getting full-time at bats. And then when he was out, I was like, oh, maybe he will get full-time, but I still didn't like Baddoo for where he went, which is way too early in my opinion for his skill set. I would be concerned if I'm an owner, because I just don't know what's the upside here. Like, you're going to need him to hit a lot higher than that to really have much value. But I mean, this is a guy who had always had a low hard hit rate. I mean, he struggled a lot in the minors with contact issues too. And I get that he came from single A, he came from high A to, and then he played a little bit at triple A last year before coming up, but he's basically, he hasn't really had the seasoning that most guys have by this point in their career. And I just felt like the risk there was massive. And yeah, he could still, develop further and become a better hitter, but I wasn't about to depend on that when drafting him this year.
Today he hit 9th and was pinch hit for by Eric Haas. How worried are you, Lauren?
I'm worried. I mean, I think Dave hit all these points really well. I think that if you were going into kind of this season thinking if, you drafted Baddoo, you were like, well, I think that he'll probably hit at the top of the lineup and maybe he'll lose time to lefties. And we haven't seen any of that. He's at the bottom of the order and feels like he's losing time to righties. So I don't think any of that really bodes well for him. And it's too bad, because I do think that this Tigers lineup is very interesting. But right now, it doesn't look good for him.
All right. Let's talk about some closing situations and how worried or jumbled we think they might be. The Kansas City situation is interesting because Scott Barlow has pitched, I believe, twice now and entered in the 8th inning in both of those games, getting this a 2-inning save in the first game and not faring so well today, where he only pitched a third of an inning, gave up a run. Lauren, what are you making of the Kansas City bullpen situation?
Yeah, this is a bullpen situation that I had kind of stayed away from. I did take flyers though on kind of like Stalmont, and then Dylan Coleman is kind of like a deeper flyer, but I kind of stayed away from the Barlows in general, just because I think that there's too many kind of saves being spread around, and we're starting to see it and right now, and I don't know that it will kind of stabilize and make more sense than just like, okay, these saves are getting spread around here with the Royals. So I just think that it's something that this isn't anything kind of new. I think it's in terms of them not setting a closer from the get-go. So I think it's just kind of closing your eyes and kind of pointing at a player and hoping that he gives you maybe 5 to 10 saves at the end of the season.
Dave, Barlow was a guy in NFBC that started to get some helium, especially towards the end of draft season. People are really starting to latch on to him as kind of one of like the third or fourth tiers of closers and being like, oh, maybe he's a guy that we can trust. Does it feel like you can trust Barlow right now?
No, he's emblematic of why I do what I do, which is taking early closers, because there's only so many guys who are actually the closer, who have been anointed the closer, who have the leash of a closer, who won't be replaced. And this guy closed for half of a season last year. Like they never named him the closer. There was no guarantee that they would keep going to him. And he's emblematic of why people struggle with closers, because they don't want to invest in the early guys. So they invest in guys like this who shouldn't be taken anywhere near where they're going, because it's basically a speculative guy. Like, you're like, well, he got some saves there last year, so maybe he gets some saves this year and his skills are good. People look at the skills more than the role, because the skills look good, but the role is not good. And there was 0% chance that I was not looking at him at all for saves. And a lot of these muddy situations, it's just like, I'm just looking back and going, yep, this is why I take early closers, because I want to avoid this mess. And I have no idea what they're going to do, but I think it's open. I think Stalmont could take it. I loved that Lauren commented on Dylan Coleman, because I drafted him in a bunch of DCs with like my last pick. He's got closer type stuff, and it's in a bullpen where there is no clear guy. So that's where you want to take those shots.
Yeah, I think this is very similar to like the Seattle situation, in which they're going to use their best reliever in their best spots. They don't, will that mean that Barlow will get saves? Absolutely, he's going to get saves. But I don't think anybody on this team gets 20 saves. No. So, do you really want to be, taking dart throws at guys who might be getting 5, 6, 8 saves, things like that? I like Dylan Coleman. He's a guy I've mentioned as maybe a sneaky long-term play. On the most recent Sleep and Bust on Sunday, and I had some kind of backup bids in for him if I didn't get other guys. But this is again going back to Dave's point. It's why I pay up for closers, because I don't want to deal in these kind of crappy situations. I know we hear all the time people are like, well, closers turn over. It doesn't matter where they are. It's the middle tier of closers that usually turn over, and that's why I don't want to play in the middle tier. Yeah. I would much rather, unless I identify someone I feel is underrated, I'll play in the top tier and then the bottom tier. I don't typically play in the.
I would much rather use a 3rd or 4th round pick on a closer who I know is the man, rather than paying like a 6th, 7th, 8th round cost on a guy who is basically a coin flip and maybe not even that. It's one of the biggest mistakes people make, in my opinion, in drafts.
I agree. Yeah. Speaking of mistakes,
Kepler time, baby.
I don't know what's happening in San Francisco. I really don't. And I'm out here. I'm watching the game right now. Dominic Leone, who got the save the other night, is currently pitching in the 6th inning.
Well, that was circumstantial, though. That was because the other two guys weren't available.
But the guy who was available, who had closed before, Tyler Rogers, pitched in the 8th. So what are you doing, Dave, in San Francisco? Kapler said that McGee was the guy. The first chance he gets, they go to Duvall.
Oh, if only you could be on our text string with me and Jake and Tony and Marcus. We're all just rolling, laughing. We're like, never Kapler? Yep, never Kapler. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't draft any of these guys.
I know.
But I mean, I'll take an L, even though I didn't draft any of these guys, and I wasn't necessarily advocating to draft these guys. What I did say was that Kapler had been very upfront and honest about his bullpen usage. In previous seasons, especially since coming to the Giants, when he said this guy's going to be the guy, that was the guy, and he stuck with them, until they were really bad. And so it is a bit surprising to me to see him having misled people. Because he previously in 2020, like he talked about during, while everything was shut down, like, hey, I really like Tyler Rogers. I think he's got closer stuff. Tyler Rogers ended up being the closer. And people weren't drafting him as such. He did the same kind of thing with Jake McGee last year. He was like, I really like Jake McGee. People didn't want to believe him because of Never Kapler. And then Jake McGee was the guy until he got hurt. And so when he said Jake McGee this year, I actually felt really comfortable. I still didn't get him. But like I felt like I felt a lot more comfortable. I was wrong, and he just gave me a middle finger, clearly. So I'm assuming, Dave, you're just avoiding this situation for the most part.
I mean, in the last Yahoo draft I did, I took Camilo Duvall with like my second last round pick because I said, you know what, I have no idea what they're doing here. He's got the skills, I can throw him in there. He'll get me some good innings and. Maybe he'll get me some occasional saves, and at that point, that's fine. He was like my closer 3. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just not paying up for those. Like, anytime those situations, I'll monitor them throughout the draft. If they fall a significant amount and I actually like the talent and think they've got a shot to be the closer, then I'll take them as a speculative guy. But I'm not paying up for them as a closer in drafts.
Lauren, where are you at?
I actually thought this one was going to be a little bit of kind of one of the more less stable options, if that makes sense. I really thought that this, and maybe this will still be the case. But, I think it was kind of split. I didn't think that, the Giants would necessarily just do nothing with McGee. I got a couple of shares of McGee because I thought worst case scenario, say he splits time with Duvall and you get say like 15 saves out of it or something. But yeah, I think that the usage so far, it's a little bit mind-boggling, but maybe that just means he'll continue to do that. But yeah, this is something where from kind of stable to me to like way less stable now.
Yeah, this feels like it's going to turn into a straight committee.
Mm-hmm.
That they're going to ride the hot hand or play matchups. I mean, Duvall's got the stuff to take it over. Absolutely,
they both do. If McGee's velocity is good, he's got the stuff too.
I mean, The thing is with like San Francisco, why I gave it a little bit more of a leg up was that to me it was looking at a pen committee of 2 guys versus 3 or 4. So I was like, well, okay, you're going to get some more saves out of that. But if you start kind of throwing a couple more guys in there, then that's really not.
I still think it is a committee of 2.
Yeah, I think it's the 2.
I don't think Rogers necessarily
own
because I mean if Rogers was factoring into it when they were up in the 9th yesterday, they would have gone to Rogers. Then they threw him in the 8th and went with Dominic Leone. And like I said, Dominic Leone just pitched the 6th, made a really snazzy play to end the 6th, backhanded a comebacker. But I think it feels like it is a committee of 2. That can change. I mean, clearly we're going back to Philadelphia Kapler. Where he throws a dart before the game, and that's the guy who's closing for him that night. So, speaking of throwing a dart, the Red Sox closing situation is interesting. People were paying money on Whitlock, paying money on Barnes in draft season. Barnes really struggled dealt with some velocity issues, and he was kind of stripped of the closing responsibilities. They signed Hansel Robles, who has closing experience. So who gets the save? Jake Diekman strikes out the middle of the Yankees order last night. And had that happened an hour earlier, you would have seen $100 bids on Jake Diekman. But because Fab had already passed,
saved people from themselves.
It saved people from themselves. Lauren, what are you doing in the Boston bullpen?
I don't know. Wait, is Diekman also the one who, when he was asked if he was
said, I don't give a shit.
He said, I don't give a shit. I mean, it's just like, well, it's also as part of the kind of the Barnes issue is that he's got some back stiffness, and then his velo was a little bit down. Mm-hmm. I still think that they may throw it Barnes' way. I mean, he's coming off of a contract year. He had, he obviously had last year had a really phenomenal first half of the season, and then really kind of imploded like in August, I think, of last season. But I still think that they'll go back to Barnes. And even though, I mean, because Diekman's just kind of out of the blue, right? More or less. So I don't know. I still think I roll with Barnes in this one, and I think kind of be okay with it. Although now that I'm saying that out loud, it sounds a little weird, but I'd still roll with the Barnacle.
Dave, were you rolling with the Barnacle?
No, God, no. I mean, I think he pitched the 6th today. Yeah, pitched the 6th today. I mean,
it was his first game back, though.
Yeah, and they might be just trying to get him in a game just to get work in. I agree with you that I think he's the most likely bet for saves in this bullpen at some point to take over, but I think it could be Robles in the short term, and then I think eventually the plan is to go to Barnes if Barnes is okay. But they've got a lot of guys there, and I just why deal with that? I'd rather invest in the San Fran situation because I think it's 2 people. This is like several people, and there were talks of Diekman had 7 saves last year, and there were times in the past where they were talking about him being a potential closer, but I don't like he said, I don't think he gives a shit about closing. And so I don't think, I don't know. I wouldn't assume that he would be the closer. I think it'll either be a committee or eventually go back to Barnes. But either way, even with Barnes, I don't know if he's very good though. I mean, it's like having Daniel Bard as your closer. It's like, okay, he might be the closer, but do you want those ratios? I mean, I guess I get that saves are saves, but I don't know. I'm avoiding it.
Here's the thing. I think they want Barnes to get it so that we can recoup some value on him and potentially trade him if they're not competing at the deadline. I think one of 2 things happens. Either they are competing at the deadline and they make a trade for a bona fide closer.
That's probably likely, yeah.
Or they're not competing and they trade away whoever they've propped up as their closer. And so you're likely taking dart throws in a crowded situation for the potential of 15 saves before the end of the first half.
Yeah, don't you want to do that, Justin?
I do not.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
isn't that the goal?
If I do, it better be damn cheap dart throws. So if Diekman goes out and gets another save or 2 this week, and he goes for $100+ in Fab, it's not going to be to me. I'd much rather throw $5 on Robles, and hope that he's a guy that looks like he's pitching decent right now. He's got closing experience, but yeah, I trust pretty much no one in this situation. I'd have to be in a pretty desperate situation. Again, I'm not, because I tend to invest in situations that I'm a lot more comfortable in. Another situation that I'm not very comfortable in is the Reds situation. So we saw Santillan get the first save. We've seen Art Warren get the second save, and I consider myself part of the Art Warren truther crowd because I was drafting him. Dave is pointing at himself for those of you not watching the video. But man, there are some Art Warren truthers that have blinders on, because the moment he got his first save, they're doing victory laps like he didn't even get an opportunity in the first opportunity for a save. Like that didn't happen 2 days before. So what are you doing in this bullpen situation there, Lauren? Is this just a straight committee, or do you think someone's going to emerge?
No, I don't think anyone's going to emerge. I think that, this is a team that really spreads the saves around. So, I think that I went into draft season and I actually did like a Sims and a Warren, like get those two kind of at the tail end of the draft. And I figured between those two, I'd be covers. But then you have like Sessa shows up and now you have Santillan, is it?
Santillan, I think.
Santillan is what I would assume, but I don't know.
And so I think that, and you've got Sims who's on the IL. I would like to think that if Sims, once he's off, that maybe he will kind of be the primary guy. But again, like this is not a team that has kind of like a linear save path. They spread it around. So I think it'll be spread around. I wouldn't be surprised if all four of these guys just get a handful of saves.
Dave?
So in my circle of friends, possibly the only manager more hated than Gabe Kapler is David Bell. The never David Bell chants are always clear amongst my friends. But I will say this. I don't think you should read too much into Santillan save up because he was already warming up when the previous pitcher Moreta gave up the home run. So he was going to come into a 6-1 game and then he gave up the home run, which made it a save situation. So he was already warm. So they just brought him in. I'm not saying that this isn't still a committee, but I don't think you should be investing in Santillan at all. And I do think that Art Warren might be the head of that. And I do think that there's a possibility that he eventually comes with that job. I am interested in Art Warren still. I would still be holding him if I had him. But I also don't trust David Bell. Very, very clear on that. Don't trust him. Don't want to invest in situations like this at all, but he's very, very good. And I do think that he's probably the most likely candidate moving forward to get saves there.
Over Sims, say when he comes back?
That's a good question. I don't know that. I do know that people were assuming that Sims was the closer. They've never named him.
Did you know that, Justin?
I do know.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Tell us the answer.
Lucas Sims' last save opportunity was June 16th of last year.
Right.
He's not the closer either.
Yeah.
Like maybe he factors in as a committee, but he's not going to just take this job over. Like they could have given him the job last year. They didn't. So. Yeah, I mean, and he's had opportunities to nail down that job in the past and hasn't. So I don't think that, and as we talk, my screen is turning red again for some reason, as if the Lucas Sims rage inside of me.
The red is coming out.
But I don't think Lucas Sims becomes the guy once he's healthy. And I mean, that assumes he becomes healthy.
Yeah.
Like that's an assumption I don't think we should automatically take a leap into. So
between like all say 4 of these teams that we discussed, 4 or 5 teams, like which do you feel like the most comfortable with? Would it be like San Francisco?
Probably the Giants because like Dave I said a couple times, there's only 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, but they both got drafted. So unless someone drops one of them, if anybody drops Art Warren, especially after Santillan got that save up, I would pick him up, but not for a closer price. I would pick him up for, an NFBC 15s. I would pick him up for somewhere in the neighborhood of like, $30-$40, something like that.
I agree. Let's talk about some guys that we're buying. Dave, you kind of mentioned Stephen Kwan already.
Yeah.
He has been absolutely amazing to start the year. Are you buying Stephen Kwan?
Yeah, he's hitting something like 800 or something.
It's ridiculous.
He's the new Yastrzemski. Carl, that is, not Mike. No, but like he's a guy who I said was going to be successful right off the bat because the guys who come up here like Juan Soto, I mean, he's not like Juan Soto, but who have that plate discipline like Juan Soto, they have the most success right away because they translate much better. I mean, this guy makes a ton of contact. You cannot strike this guy out. In the minor leagues, he led the minor leagues in strikeout rate. It was like second place was like double his strikeout rate. He was like 2.9%, and like the next closest was like 5.7% or something like that strikeout rate. Like, he is absurdly difficult to get out. So the problem is that there's not a whole lot of upside aside from that. Like, he can get you maybe 10 to 12 homers, maybe 5 steals, 6 steals, something like that. But that has some value when you put that with like a 300 plus average, which is a possibility with him. I'm not going to call for a 330 average in his rookie year, but he can definitely hit in the 300-ish area now, and I think in his prime he will hit like 330. So I like him a lot, and he's going to hit second, and I think they're going to play him every day. Like, I don't see how they take him out of the lineup right now, frankly.
Yeah, and they've moved him up to the 2-hole, so I think that he's going to stay, and he makes sense at the top of that.
One game, it took one game to move him to the number, so you knew that they were.
And then trade Bradley Zimmer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've hated Bradley Zimmer for a long time. I told you he's trash. So I'm fine with that. I was like, did we get a bucket of balls back? Cool. All right, I'm in.
What are your thoughts on Kwan there, Lauren?
I love him. I'm like all on the Kwan train. And Dave's right. I think that it's, you never really know how rookies are going to adjust to things at the major level. But, for me, if I'm going to bet on a rookie, give me the one with the strong kind of plate and contact skills. Because these are skills that can keep you in the league. You may not have like the most power or the most speed or kind of stand out in one of those categories. But, the contact skills and plate skills, that's stuff that will keep you in the league. And I do think that he will contribute a little bit across the board. I had a bold prediction with over on SP Streamer. I said that he was going to be a 2010 candidate, but the question mark there, of course, is with that power, because he didn't really, in the minor leagues, he didn't really profile as a big power guy. But it was my understanding that Cleveland had worked with some of his mechanics, and he was hitting more homers. So I'm not exactly sure what you're going to get on the power front. But I do think that he will contribute across the board, and he should give you that really strong batting average. And, if they're going to keep him at the top of that lineup, you get that runs plus scored. So, I'm all in on Kwan. You just kind of have to know what you're getting from him.
Yeah, currently, I mean, if you kind of watch the games and stuff, you're seeing the bat path is not like a really high launch angle.
Okay.
And the numbers are bearing that out. So like, I'm kind of with you. I said, like, I think he could be like a 15-15 guy this year with a plus batting average. His bat path currently, I don't think 15 is probably in the cards. I mean, it's probably single digits.
I don't think he's going to run that much either. I think he'd be lucky to get 10, but
I think he could. I mean, he's got some wheels, but who knows?
Yeah.
What you are going to get,
bold prediction.
Yes. What you are going to get is a premium batting average if he continues to do what he's doing. I mean, he has not struck out yet. His on-base percentage is almost 800. His zone contact is 100%. His O contact is 100%. And his swinging strike rate is 0%. Like, he is just, I mean,
the strikeout rate will be ridiculously low. It'll still be in like the 5% area. Like, I'm telling you, he's not going to strike out like 20% even as a rookie. He's going to strike out ridiculously low.
Yeah.
He struck out 6.7% in AAA last year.
Okay.
So, like, I mean, he's going to probably have a sub 10% strikeout rate, which is amazing given today's, MLB. Here's the thing, like, and I tweeted about this earlier today, because there were some people yesterday, like, were like screaming on Twitter, now's the time to sell Steven Kwan. Sell him for what?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if anybody is like going to overpay for Steven Kwan, I don't know what you think you're getting, because like typically people who like overpay for a player are overpaying for a counting category, which while he is hitting like almost 700 right now, he has 0 home runs and 0 stolen bases.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know what you think you're getting. So like, I think you just ride it and enjoy the hell out of it, because you got him super cheap, or maybe even off the waiver wire for a lot of leagues. I mean, I even had a couple people tweet at me that he was still available in their leagues. You scoop him up, put him in your lineup because he's the perfect guy to help you balance your batting average on your team. So, and if he's going to continue to hit second, it's a lot of runs scored, like Lauren mentioned. So, it's I don't think you can sell him right now. Like, what are you going to get for him? Like, some people are like, oh, what about Andrew Vaughn? I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess if that fits, if you need a little bit more pop, sure, you could trade him for Andrew Vaughn, but like that's not really like selling high on a guy. Like I think they're equal value. Connor Joe, same type of thing. I think they're kind of equal value. I'd be fine making that move if you want the attributes that Joe or Vaughn gives you, but like the idea that you're going to get like some 6th round pick, someone, I think it was Mike Curlin, was like, if you can get a top 100 player, you're not getting a top 100 player for Stephen Kwan right now. And if you are, do it. Enjoy just taking advantage of someone, but like, you're just not going to. Like, I just can't imagine you do. So,
yeah.
All right. Another Cleveland guy. Oh no, actually, didn't even read my order right. Josh Lowe is a guy who people dropped in Fab because he wasn't going to make the team, and then the Austin Meadows trade happened. He does make the team, and people threw money around like they were at a gentleman's club. It was ridiculous. He went for $555 in my main event.
Wow.
To a very well-respected member of the industry in Dalton Del Don.
Wow.
I could not even get close to that. But he's been playing every day, including against lefties. Lauren, are you starting to get excited about Josh Lowe?
Yeah, I think that he's really interesting. I mean, you kind of alluded to some of this. He should get the playing time. He's kind of been going kind of 5, 6, 7 in the batting order. Maybe he moves up a little bit. He's got a little bit of some strikeout issues, but he's a good defender. I think that glove should keep him in the game, and I think that the Rays find ways to give you playing time. And I think that he's one of these guys with that, kind of pop speed profile. If he kind of adjusts well, I think that he'll be, an everyday player over there. So I like him.
Dave, how about you?
Yeah, he was the guy who I told Tony for the main event. I said, if we can get him at a point in the draft where it makes sense, because I kept looking at spring training lineups and I'm like, they're playing him like a lot. They're really trying to get a good look at him, and there is an opportunity for him to play here. Because we'd heard that they were going to trade someone. We thought it might be Kiermaier or Margot, but it ended up being Meadows. And so we ended up taking him in the main event, like round 27 or 28. I can't remember which. We got Kimbrel in the 23rd too. So this is like 2 huge boons for us in the last 10 rounds, which was crazy. We did end up keeping him. We did not drop him right away when he didn't make the team, because I was like, Meadows actually had an injury right before he was traded, and we didn't know how serious the injury was, and we were like, we don't need to drop him right now. Let's hold him. And then thank God, because then he went for all this money in Fab the next week. And yeah, I mean, these are the kind of guys that you are trying to take shots on in those last 10 rounds, guys who give you power and speed. Because outside of the first 5 rounds or so, you really don't find those guys much. So at least not without huge warts. So yeah, he does strike out a bit. He's not going to give you a great average, but I mean, he stole 30 bases in 2019 in the minors, and then 26 in 2021, and he's like he's got 20 plus home run power. Now, granted, this is in Tampa, but the park's not great for power, but if they're going to play him every day, which it looks like they are, I mean, they'll probably play him Tampa every day. It'll probably be like, they'll probably sit a game a week at least, but I'm still okay with that. And I mean, I'm not willing to go 500 plus on him, but $300 in Fab seems pretty reasonable for that, especially this early in the season, because you're going to have him for the rest of the year.
We have Nick Pollock in the chat saying hi to Lauren.
Hi.
Hi, Nick.
And he
doesn't say hi to us. But
he's also apologizing to me for something that I can't reveal yet. But Nick, come on, man, get your shit together. Anyways, here's the thing: if Stephen Kwan is Dr. Jekyll, then Josh Lowe is Mr. Hyde. because he is like the exact opposite, right? Like he's going to strike out probably 30% of the time this year, but he has got a ton of power and speed. I don't know what the batting average is going to be. The defense is good, and I think that helps him. That being said, like I think there's a lot more risk than people were showing with these massive bids.
That's fair.
The $550 bid was not even a top 5 bid in a main event league this week.
Can we not count Heber League though? Because Heber League throws like $600 at guys because he's trying to run out of money in the
Was he the guy who bought him in 3 leagues?
Yeah, he was the guy who had like 7 bids, like over $600 or whatever.
Okay.
Like,
but I mean, there were still multiple other bids above that 555 because Paul had tweeted out like here were the top 5 bids. 3 of them went to the same guy. But I mean, there's still other multiple bids that, I mean, I bid, I think $90-something on him in a few leagues, including the tag team. Didn't get him anywhere.
No.
But there is a real risk if he continues to strike out at like a 30% clip. Currently it's at 25%. But if he strikes out at a 30+% clip, he's not going to be on this team for super long. Like, I mean, the Rays will give him some rope, but they also have Vidal Brujan in the minor leagues. Like, this is a team that is rich with assets. They've got, Taylor Walls, and they've got, they've got other guys they can bring up if this doesn't work out. They can also just kind of piecemeal things together. We've seen them do that before. So I think it's amazing to see them give him a lot of run right now. But I think this idea that his playing time is safe is not the case. Because no one is safe on the Rays in terms of playing time outside of, the guy they just paid $300 million to.
I agree with you, but I will say they have a couple of other guys who strike out damn close to 30% too. I mean, Rosarena was at 29% in 2020, 28% in 2021. He's currently at 33% this year. And
but he also hit.
He's not going anywhere. Yeah. I mean,
if Lowe is hitting, then the 30% is palatable because he plays good defense. But if he's not hitting, and he's striking out 30% of the time,
he definitely has the risk of being sent back down. That's for sure. I don't consider Brujan a huge threat. They've proven that he's kind of behind other guys. They've played Taylor Walls over him. I don't know. Personally, I'm not super. I don't even know if Brujan can hit at this level either. So here's the thing. I think that Lowe, it's a risk, but it's a shot worth taking because of the upside of that power speed combo. Not for 500 plus, but for more than $90 too.
Okay, and I'm totally fine with that.
You're fine with missing on him, and that's cool. Yeah,
I don't think you need to like. I'm not saying like drop him or don't bid on him if he's still available on your team. Like I'm just saying, like, I think there's this idea that people are developing, like, hey, that this guy's he's like a guaranteed next level star.
No,
but this guy has struggled with strikeouts and contact in the minor leagues. On the plus side, like Lauren mentioned, plays good defense. He also walks. He's a double-digit walk guy, and he's walking at a double-digit rate already this season. So like that is, to his benefit because they don't care about the batting average. They care about your own base percentage, right? It's a major league team. Like this is not, they're not playing 5x5 roto. And if they are, they've substituted on base percentage for batting average. So let's move on to the other Cleveland guy, Dave, Oscar Mercado.
Yeah.
Coming out the gate hot. You excited?
I am a little bit, actually. I mean, even though he had like a 182 average coming into today, and I think he went 1 for 5 today, but he did homer again. Mm-hmm. And even his outs though are hard hit. And he's not really striking out much, and he's never really struck out much outside of a very tiny sample in 2020. He's like a 17-18% K rate guy, and that's where he is right now. And that's very sustainable at this level. And yeah, like we've seen him be like that kind of 5-ish category guy, like in 2019, 15 homers, 15 steals, 270 average in under 500 plate appearances. And supposedly in the offseason, he put on some muscle as well while maintaining his swing. He just looks a lot more comfortable up there. I remember watching him the last couple of years and thinking he doesn't look like he's comfortable at all. He looks overmatched, and I'm not seeing that anymore. It's early. He might not work out, but the opportunity is there. He can play full time. There's room for him, Kwan, and Straw to play every day there. And I don't think guys like Bobby Bradley and even Josh Naylor, who's going to be back soon. And there's another outfielder. Oh, Chang kind of is in there too. I'm just not really concerned about those
Rosario's
guys.
out there too.
Yeah, see, with Rosario, they've been playing him at shortstop the last couple games, though. And I don't know why it's not an option for them to put Ahmed Rosario at second base and let Jimenez, who's actually a much better fielder, play shortstop. But for whatever reason, I guess Ahmed Rosario
comfortability. He's been playing shortstop most of his career. So
yeah, I guess so. But isn't left field was a new position for him too? You'd think learning second base would be easier than learning left field. So it doesn't look like they're playing. I mean, with Mercado and Kwan playing as well as they are, they're officially pretty much sticking with Rosario at shortstop. So I think that's I don't like it from a defensive standpoint, but I think Mercado could be something, and he's a guy I'll definitely be looking to pick up. I think he's going to go for a decent amount of fab this weekend, unless he goes real cold the rest of the week.
What about you, Lauren? You interested in Mercado?
Yeah, I am. I was saying earlier that I was going to start doing a kind of hot and cold series over at Fantrax, and I actually just wrote down Mercado's name today. I haven't done a ton of research on him yet, but yeah, I think that he could be a sneaky speed source for them, and I think it's really comes down to playing time. And it sounds like, what Dave was saying is that, he can have it. I don't know that there's lots of kind of competition there. And, in 2019, we saw the most kind of plate appearances from him. He had 482 plate appearances, and he walked away at, 15 homer, 15 steals. So, he's got some of that pop and speed. And if he can get that playing time, I think that he'll be a sneaky kind of asset for this team. And, they just traded away Bradley Zimmer. So that's another person that you don't really have to, who's kind of in the picture. So I think he could stick.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you guys. I mean, we're not that far removed from when he was viable and that, and kind of a breakout guy in fantasy. And, the old Ron Chandler mantra is like, once you show a skill, you own it. And so it would not surprise me. And like Dave mentioned, there's opportunity. Like Cleveland outfield, this is why Kwan was able to kind of break camp with the team, is because there's not a ton of options there. So he's going to have an opportunity to play. It'd be interesting to see what happens once Naylor is back. Naylor's supposed to be back, I believe, on Friday. So, but if Mercado continues to hit, he's going to get opportunities. So,
yeah.
Moving on, Jorge Mateo, my boy, is starting out the season hot. Lauren, what are your thoughts on Mateo? You buying this?
I am kind of buying it. I do listen to Mike Curlin a lot as well, and he's been pumping the Jorge Mateo music pretty loudly in the off season. So, but he's kind of taken advantage of his opportunities so far. He's got 2 stolen bases in 4 games this season. He's buried a little bit down there on the bottom end of the lineup, but if he can kind of, well, I guess he could be fine if he's staying. It's not ideal, say, to be hitting like out of like the 9 hole or something. You want him a little bit higher.
Not in Baltimore.
Yeah. So, but it's just like, I think that, last season he had 10 stolen bases and 209 plate appearances. So he's definitely one of these very kind of late guys that's probably sitting on your waiver right now, especially in shallower leagues. And you could probably pick him up and, take a shot on some speed.
With Billy Hamilton not making the team and going down back to the minors, Jorge Mateo is legit fastest man in Major League Baseball right now. If there was anything higher than 80 grade speed, Jorge Mateo would have it. If he gets the playing time, and it looks like the Orioles seem committed to him, he could legit steal 40 to 50 bases this year.
I really do think that if he's sitting on your wire, at least pick him up right now.
He should be rostered in just about every format.
Yeah.
Dave, where are you at on Mateo?
Okay. For pure stolen bases, yes, really, really good source of that. He's the kind of guy who I don't like, though. Like, he's hitting at the bottom of the lineup, and he's got a horrible like batted ball profile, and like just strikes out a lot. Doesn't walk. I know he's walking a little bit so far, but typically he's like a 4% walk rate guy. Doesn't hit the ball hard. Contact rate sketchy. Just everything about him. He kind of reminds me of Jonathan VR a bit, but like a lesser version. But I do think that he can run a lot. So like if you're looking for shitty steals, I think he is the perfect guy to plug in there and get those steals. And I think he came in with outfield eligibility, and he's going to be gaining shortstop eligibility very shortly. So shortstop, outfield eligible, tons
shitty
of steal.
steals.
Shitty steals.
Shitty steals. It's aces.
Yeah.
He's go pick them up.
Yeah, exactly. If you
name of the podcast is Shitty Steals with Lauren
if you
Auerbach.
came out of your draft, maybe let's call it Darf without any speed.
Right.
Mateo might be the perfect guy to add there.
Yep. Exactly. I need some shitty steals. So
there you go.
And sometimes when you leave a draft without him, you got to use shitty steals.
Yeah.
Elliot Ramos, and it is pronounced Elliot Ramos, not Helio Ramos.
It's Elliot, like just Elliot.
Like
okay.
The H is silent. I heard it on the broadcast, so unless the broadcast was wrong, I assume they got it right. So Elliot Ramos made his major league debut, went 2 for 3. Any interest in picking him up, Dave?
It looked like because they brought him in to start against the first time they faced a lefty, and so my first thought was, okay, he's a short side platoon guy, maybe. Well, I want to see if he would start today.
He did not start today.
He did not start today. So yeah, I mean, and maybe that role could grow. I think he's interesting in deep leagues like 15s. I think you could stash him to see if he gets more playing time. But keep in mind, this is San Francisco. This is home of the platoon. They love platoons. So I don't know what kind of an opportunity he really has to play every day there. Now, Justin, I would be more interested to hear your take, but right now I'm not overly interested unless I have the ability to stash a guy.
I mean, let's see. They're going to play a lefty tomorrow, and then they go to Cleveland, who is not going to be starting any lefties.
We don't have any of that.
Well, real quickly, what was the corresponding move on this? Was there someone that was injured?
Somebody went to the bereavement list, and then another player is going to go on. Tyler Rogers is going to go on paternity
leave. Yeah,
it seems like it could just be like a short-term.
He could be a short-term.
Come up for a cup of coffee and then send him back down because I don't think they want to leave him up as a short side platoon guy.
3 days before this news was announced, he was Farhan Zaidi, who's the general manager of the Giants, was asked about Elliot Ramos, and he said he should be up sometime this summer.
Okay.
And so it was super surprising to me that he got the call at all. And the way Kapler kind of talked about him, it sounds like he's going to be a short side platoon guy. And that they're going to take advantage of his work versus lefties. So unless there is, some sort of corresponding move, they're going to send someone else down. I think once these guys come back from bereavement and paternity leave, he's probably heading back down. Because I like Dave just said, I don't think they want to necessarily just keep him up to be a short side platoon guy. He still has work to do in the minors. I mean, he struck out quite a bit last year. So, I mean, he had a great spring, and maybe they're rewarding him with that right now. And if he hits well, he could force them to kind of keep him up. But I just don't see the upside here, honestly. All right. Let's finish out with Tyler McGill, who, man, if there's always one player, I think, and I'm sure everybody has this, where you see the hype train's coming, and it just passes you because you're like, it's too expensive. And the hype's getting out of control. And then as you watch it go by, you go, oh no, that was a mistake. And that's how I'm feeling on Miguel right now, because the hype train was legit. We saw it in Vegas, continued throughout the end of draft season. People were really busting him up draft boards. And I was just like, I'm not going to pay this inflated price on it. And after that first start, man, do I wish I had. Lauren, what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I feel badly for you that you didn't hop on the McGill train, because I think right now also, I mean, he looks like the brightest spot in this Mets rotation, but I mean, he just
healthiest spot. Did you mean to say?
Yeah, yes, exactly. But I mean, opening day, he was just like throwing heat. He was really great. His fastball averaged 96 miles per hour. It topped out at 99, I think 99.1. He's got really great kind of breaking balls. His changeup and his slider were really working the other day.
That slider is nasty.
Oh, I know. I had like a 62.5% whiff rate. And I think with those breaking balls combined with, it looks like, as of his just kind of opening day appearance, if he's also has things figured out with his fastball, and if he's throwing more heat on that, then that 3-pitch combo for him, I think, will just, work magic this season. And I think that he could be a steal this season. And I know, Michael Simeone has been a big Tyler McGill guy since last season. So none of this is especially new to me, but seeing it on opening day and what we saw on opening day, if you weren't aboard, if you can still get aboard on the train, the McGill train, you should.
Dave, go ahead and just enjoy it, because it's
my god,
yeah, it's gonna be good.
The only player I have more shares of than Tyler McGill this year is Brian Reynolds. I wanted all of the McGill. He has everything I look for in a player that I'm gonna buy into. He had great control. He's got the stuff, and then he also had the velo bump from last year to this year. So, like, going from, I think he was throwing 94 last year, if I'm correct, to now throwing 96 plus and hitting 99
at the beginning of the season.
At the beginning of the season, yeah. Modica calls him Baby Goat.
He's not wrong.
Jacob deGrom mini clone, and so in my 2 high money leagues, the Ultimate and the Super, Modica was in both of them, and I knew that it was going to come down to the two of us, like, who's going to pull the trigger first. And it was always like, every time he picked and I had 2 more picks, I'm like, is this the time I have to take McGill? And in the 14th round in the Ultimate, he passed on him. And I said, well, I'm not letting him go. I'm not giving you 2 more shots at him. So I took him there. And then the next day in the Super, he took him then a round earlier in front of me to get me back on him. So kudos to him for doing that. I have all the McGill, and I only wish I could have gotten even more. He is phenomenal. I don't care what size league you're in, go pick him up if he's available. Yeah. And if you're in like a Yahoo league where you have to, it's daily fab, and you can pick guys up for free often, put a couple dollars down at least. I would put down at least $8-9 just to make sure you get him. So, I mean, this guy is legit ace, I think, this year.
Yeah, you guys pretty much just echoed everything I wrote on him after opening day. I'm disappointed in myself for not.
I feel like I failed you. Like, how did I not get you on him? I know I talked about him.
Paul talked about him too, and I didn't buy it. And by the time I started to buy in, the hype train had just gone too far. And I tried to get him in my last main, and I think it was Scott Genstad sniped me, or someone sniped me right before I was able to pull the trigger on him. And is what it is. I'm gonna enjoy watching it. I'll enjoy using him in DFS. But that's it's unfortunate, just not gonna be on any of my my season long teams this year. Last question before we go, Lauren, is are you Dr. Dave? This is our first denial. I don't know that I buy it though.
No, wasn't me. Not me.
Lauren, remind everybody on social media, and then plug all your work.
Well, you can find me at LK Auerbach on Twitter, and then once a week I co-host the Full Count podcast with Michael Simeone, and then starting this week I will be doing a hot cold series that I'll be running throughout the season on Fantrax. So find me at all of those places. And I want to say thank you. It was really fun hanging out with you guys. It's good to see both.
It was a blast, Lauren. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for staying up late with us.
Anytime, guys. Anytime.
We're definitely going to have you back. This was fantastic.
Yes, definitely.
Honestly, the thought that went through my mind was like, this is this is definitely an episode that I might submit to the Fantasy Sports Writers Association for best podcast, because I feel like this
there
has
you go.
been a fantastic episode. Dave, remind everybody where you can reach. What are you working on?
You can reach me at RunDMcD on Twitter, and actually Jake and I are getting rotosaurus.com back running now. So he does the 2 starts, and what we have done in the past that we didn't do for the last year is we look ahead to the following week. So we give you not only the upcoming 2 starts, but then the following 2 starters the week after that, so that you can look ahead and pick them up for cheap in your leagues before. Because once a guy's a 2-starter, everybody was throwing money at him. You want to pick him up a week before. And it was an idea that I had come up with, 15 years ago that I used in my leagues. And I said, Jake, can you do this every week? And he's like, yeah, I can do this. And so it's a lot of work, but they're extremely accurate. Jake puts in a ton of time into those. And then I'm going to start putting my closer stuff on there, as well as some other things, some lineup stuff. And I'm also putting on this, which I shared with Justin. It's a fantasy baseball games matrix, and it's got all of the games between NFBC, Yahoo, Fantrax, every single fantasy game that they offer, the price points, the prizes for first, second, third place, if there's an overall prize, whether they do like waivers or fab and how much they are, and IL spots and trades. It's got all that information in it, and we're going to have that on the site as well. And so that's going to be coming hopefully this week.
Nice. You can reach me on Twitter at FWFB. My written work right now is mostly on Fangraphs, where I'm writing 5 days a week. You can hear me on this podcast, TGFBI podcast, and the Sleeper and the Bus podcast. And I occasionally write over Friends Fantasy Benefits and TGFBI.com. That will do it for this episode. For Dave, Lauren, and myself, thanks for listening. Have a fantastic baseball season.